Okay, so we are recording. So, first, I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to come and tell me about your journey today. My name's Alyssa Marley, and I'm the host of Something Paranormal podcast. Do you want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, so my name's Aaron Moulton.
And my name's Kari Moulton.
Okay, perfect. So I was introduced to you through Daniel Dancer from the Answer podcast. I did catch that episode. So my podcast is just about creating a safe space to talk about anything that's like supernatural, spiritual, paranormal. So I am extremely fascinated to hear about near death experiences. So before we dive into that, just to kind of lay the groundwork, have you always been a part of your faith, or were you different before this happened? Like, did you have any spiritual beliefs?
Both of us were born, basically what we call born in the church. So I've always been a member of that church, and same with Kari. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool. So take it away, I guess.
Yeah. So just to preface, like I've told this story a couple, like three other times, and each time I tell it, naturally there's evolutions to it. So um, as I've continued to understand what things mean, I I sort of not just like telling the story, but like telling my kind of interpretation of what things are meaning to me and what change it's had on me. I think that's
Mhm.
beneficial for the listener just to know, like, okay, there's this story, but what is it doing? You
In
know,
your life.
what's the power that this story has, right?
Mhm.
Um, so I feel like in the past I've done kind of a chronological order, and then I'll just do like sidebars because that's like the best ADD style.
Mhm.
So that's what we're gonna do.
Okay.
Um, and then Kari she's just going to interject her perspective as things roll along. So back in, I think it was 21st of February, I work as a nurse anesthesiologist at several local hospitals, and it came to the end of my shift, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was walking out of the hospital, and I had and the timing is important because of where I would have been when certain things would have happened. And so I'd stopped by and gotten a snack, walked out the door, um, headed toward the parking garage. And just as I was jumping up into my truck, I got like a little bit dizzy. And once in a while, if you stand up too fast, you might get dizzy. Or if you're dehydrated or something, just like kind of like, whoa, what's going on? But this was like more profound than I'd had experienced in the past, and it was not going away.
Mhm.
And I was like, that's weird. Maybe I had my surgeon's hat on too tight. And I was kind of like looking around for kind of like, you know how you're kind of just like blinking and looking around like, whoa, okay. And um, it wasn't that, and it was just kind of just persisting. And I was like, wow, this is kind of crazy. And we had plans that evening to drive across town, and I was going to meet Kari, and we were going to take the kids. And so I was kind of like worried about that, thinking about all the meetup times and getting everything lined up to be able to do that. I started looking at my phone, and it just looked like it was like out of focus but really far away. And I had my glasses on when I did that. I'm like, oh, maybe my glasses are weird, like just wearing them too long, or my eyes are dry or something. So I took those off, and that made it much worse. It was like even more blurry and more like it was like way out here, like 2 or 3 times the usual distance that you would when you're looking at your phone. And I was like, this is definitely not. And in my job, we take certifications every 2 years to recognize stroke symptoms. And I was like, I don't know for sure if this is a stroke, but I don't want to like leave anything to chance. And so I kind of debated like, should I just blow it off and keep driving home, or just start my car and drive? Or I am at a hospital, so maybe I just go get checked out. Maybe it's nothing and no big deal. And so I started walking. And as I was walking, it actually started getting worse. And I was like, man, I don't know. I better hurry. I might need to find a wheelchair just to get to the ER quick enough. And like, we used a key card to get through some of the security doors. And like from the left hand to the right, the coordination was getting all like I was missing my cue. Like I'd hit the keypad, and then like I couldn't open the door in time. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm losing it quick. So finally got directions to the ER. And once I got up to the check-in window, and I almost like threw my cards at the lady. I'm just like, I couldn't really tell her. I just kind of said, I'm having symptoms. Couldn't describe things very well. The words weren't coming.
You told me you had trouble using your thumb on your wallet to get your cards out of the pocket.
I don't remember that.
And so that was why you threw your wallet down, because she was asking for your insurance card and your ID, and you couldn't get it out. And you tried to set it down, but you couldn't set it down. And so it kind of like threw at her.
It like tumbled out of my hand.
Wow. And so she like looks at him and is like, okay, I'll check you in. Like he was a rude guy now. And
I'm still wearing scrubs from work. So she's probably like trying to figure out, like piece it all together. Cause some characters go into the ER. Right. And so I'm just like, and then she goes, okay, I'll get you checked in. Don't you worry. So I sat down and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to worry. And I finally got a hold of Kari because she'd been on the phone with her mom. So I called her a third time and got through. And I go, Kari, I'm not going to meet you at our meeting point. I need you to come here because I'm in the ER.
Now that's what he was probably thinking in his head. But when he actually called me, I thought he was here, like he was ready to pick us up. So I didn't even say hello to him, like, okay, where are you? I'll bring the kids out. We're ready to go. We'll meet you out in front of this spot. And he goes, Kari, I'm having symptoms. And that's all he said. And I said, you're having a stroke. Where are you? And he said, ER. And he goes, I'm at the ER. And I go, are you in the ER or are you at the ER? And all he could say was 2 people ahead. And I said, Aaron, no, I need to talk to the person at the desk. You are having trouble with your words. I could tell from what he was saying. I'm a nurse, so I could tell from what he was saying. I better clarify that something was happening with him. And I thought he was walking up to the desk and handing the phone. I didn't know at this point he had sat down and he felt like he couldn't get up, that he would fall. Okay. So you go ahead and take over from handing the phone.
So my solution to that was like, I'm not standing up, but there was a guy next to me. So I just said, here, take my phone. I need you to take it over to the lady at the desk. It's my wife on the line. Have her talk to the lady at the desk.
Now, I love that because all I heard, this is what he was probably thinking in his head again, but what I heard over this was here. That was it. That's all I heard was the word here.
I probably motioned,
and then he pointed.
Right. Okay.
All I heard was the word here. So I thought he was handing the phone to the person at the desk. That was him handing, and then I hear this the person walking up to the desk and handing, and then I hear this confused, hello? And I said, I assumed it was my husband doing all this. So I said, my husband is the one that handed you the phone. He's in scrubs. He looks healthy. He works there. He just got done with his shift in the OR. But he's having a stroke. He's having trouble verbalizing. He can't tell me the symptoms and what's happening to him right now. I need someone to see him immediately. And she was like, oh, okay, I'll have the triage nurse see him right now. I said, just tell him I'm on my way. Because I knew where he was working that day. And then I hung up. And go ahead.
So then a triage nurse came out and she started asking me questions, like basically doing the neuro assessment, the stroke assessment. They happen to be like a stroke response center. So they, done this 1,000 times. And so she asked me these questions, do this, do that. And she's kind of like skeptically like, okay, whatever. And I'm like, just please take it for what it is. Like, don't judge me. Just like listen to the symptoms and, and so
it's because you were such a new stroke patient. He could still move both sides of his body. One was just a little bit weaker. It was just starting.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Did your head hurt at all? Because I've heard that.
It felt like a vague pain, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, it was just like thinking was just super cloudy. Right. So she goes, okay, well, I guess we'll call the stroke alert. And she wheels me back to one of the rooms. And I hear overhead in the hospital, stroke alert, whatever they said. And all these people just like swarmed around me. And I had a water bottle with me because and when you work in the operating room, you don't drink enough water. And so I'm like catching up on my daily intake, right? So I had this water bottle and I was about to take a sip. And she's like, let me see that. And she grabbed it out of my hand. And I was like, oh, man. And so they take me into, I don't know what area, outside the CT scanner, and basically took off my top, threw me in a scrub or a hospital gown, and picked me up. Like all these people just like picked me up, put me in the scanner,
He told
started
me
an IV,
he
put me in
felt
the
like
scanner.
he told me he felt like a passenger in his body at this point. He
Yeah.
couldn't like move. They had to move his arms to get him. They had to move his legs.
I was trying to move, but it was probably like, just kind of like not very coordinated. Like gross versus fine motor skills were, the fine motor skills were fading a lot.
Right.
And so they scooped me in the scanner, and I've been there, many, many times for work, doing sedation or whatever for procedures. And so it was not a foreign place for me. But the room is dark, and they lay me down on the machine, and they go, okay, you're going to feel some warmth go through your arm as we inject the dye. We'll tell you when that's going to happen. And so they start doing the scan, and this machine starts whirring, like, and all of a sudden I'm starting to imagine myself like I'm in a collider going around in a circle, like in an atomic collider, or I felt like I was like in a wormhole, just like going through a tunnel. And like a certain amount of gravity just kind of pulling me in this direction. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, this isn't how, this is really this isn't how people are supposed. I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm ready to die. Is that a question that's on the table right now? Because I sure really feel like my body and my spirit are like starting to separate. And it was almost like a breakup. Like, okay, body, this isn't working out, so I'm going to leave you behind. Like that was my spirit kind of saying that, right? Logically coming to that conclusion. Like nothing wrong with my spirit, but my body is just like not having it right now. So they finish the scan, and they take me to, I could not wait to get out of the scanner. Like, and I just didn't feel comfortable at all in there. And so they take me back to the ER bay and just park me like in the back. And one thing that really upset me during that time is that there were no monitors whatsoever on me. No heart rate monitor, blood pressure, oxygenation, EKG, any of that going on. And there's actually a fairly high incidence of people having reactions to the contrast dye. And I thought that should be something, as an anesthesia provider, we look out for that. So I'm like, there's no safety net here. Nobody's really watching my vital signs right now. So they took me into the ER bay, and they offered me a blanket. And I was like, no, I'm good. I didn't even feel like hot and cold on my skin. I was just like, just kind of sitting there in the gown, almost like a mannequin, really. And it was weird because there was a bunch of nursing students all lined up against the back of the room. And I thought it was a little bit rude that they were just kind of like whispering to each other, like, being students, what students do. But it didn't feel I just felt like my privacy was being violated, even though they're all supposed to be just students. But so I'm sitting there, and the drive for Kari should have been like 20 minutes, probably about the time that I finished the scan. She should have been really close by. And the whole time I'm like rattling off her phone number. This is my wife's phone number. Call her, please. Tell her where I'm at, so she doesn't have to wander around. And they don't have to search for her phone number in the chart, because I knew that I didn't want that to be a reason for delay.
But you also didn't feel like you could remember it later.
Yeah, I was like, take this phone number now, because I'm not sure if I can talk. I'll be able to talk later or remember it later, because things were just progressing. And they would just say, okay, it's fine, we got it, no worries, we're gonna get you through, just have a seat or relax. And so I'm sitting there. They finally just kind of put me in the bay, and they're probably waiting for the radiologist to read the results. And I notice my phone is sitting next to me, and I just go, well, I'm going to text Kari, because I don't know where she's at, and I'm not even sure if I'm going to be alive by the time she gets here. And so I type out all caps, "I love you!" ! It was really weird what the thoughts were going through my head, but I really felt like I was convinced that I wasn't going to make it through. And I wanted the most important person in my life to be able to at least be there for whatever was going to happen. I wanted her to be there one last time, I guess.
Right.
It's hard to put those things into words, but that's really what I was feeling.
I'll tell my little part right here. Do you want?
Yeah.
So after I got the phone call from him, I went into compartmentalization mode. I can't have my kids see me freaking out, and I can't scared them. They're only 4. And so I had my car there. We were at like an indoor play place because that's where we were going to meet with my husband. And I drove home, and luckily this day, Erin's cousin cleans homes, and she had a cancellation. And she said, "Hey, I can come and clean your house today." I'm like, sweet. So she came, and she was at my home. And I called her on the drive, and I told her what happened. She's just like, "Bring the kids." So I had someone who could immediately take my kids, and I didn't have to find someone. That was amazing. And then I dropped the kids off, and I got him some like earbuds and a change of clothes and his phone charger, stuff like that I knew he'd need because I knew he'd be admitted, and,
Right.
and left. And then it started to rain when I was pulling in my driveway. And after I grabbed my stuff and left, it was only like 5 minutes. It was raining so bad that my windshield wipers couldn't keep up with it. It was one of those kind of fluke rainstorms. And I check the weather every day. I'm a big gardener, so I want to know if I have to cover my plants or whatever because it's February. And there was nothing in the forecast for rain at all. And even they commented about it later in the news that we had this freak rainstorm that wasn't even planned. And it was raining so bad that our home was very close to the freeway. And I got on the freeway to drive to the hospital, 15, 20-minute drive. It was a parking lot. Everybody was going so slow. There were hundreds of cars pulled off to the side because there just doesn't rain that much in Arizona where we live. And they didn't have the skills to drive in it. We lived in Florida, and I grew up in Houston, Texas. I'm so used to rain, doesn't matter. And I had somewhere to go. I wasn't going to pull over, but they were just pulled over to the side with their lights on, waiting. I passed 3 accidents with ambulances and police officers and stuff there, and it took me an hour to get from there to the hospital. And I got his text when I was only like 10 minutes away. And I got a phone call when I was only like 5 minutes away because the nurse finally called me to see where I was, and so she could let him know. And of course, I'm like crying and praying the whole time. And now you can take over. Or do you want me to say how you looked when I saw you?
Yeah, because once I sent that text, I probably relaxed, and I don't know if I either fell asleep or went into some sort of like trance or just like a really deep, profound checking out of consciousness.
You were checked out, babe.
So that's when she came on the scene.
So when I came into the ER, they told me what bay he was in. The nurse did when she called me, and so I knew right where to go. And when I walked into the ER, he was in a very big bay right in front of the nurse's station. That's why all the nurses were looking at him, because he was literally, the desk was here. He had the big bay, and you're in a big bay if you're someone they need to watch in case your vital signs crash and they need to bring in all the carts and things for the machinery and the people that might be needed. So that's why they put you in a big room. So at first I freaked out, I go, oh no, he's in a big room. That means this is not going to be good. And when I got closer, he had no blanket on him. He was sitting in a gurney still with the head elevated slightly, but not like all the way at like 45-degree angle. And his heels were on the sheet of the pad on the gurney. And he was pumping his right and left heels up and down on the bed like he was trying to push himself up in the bed. Right leg, left leg, right leg, left leg. And his right arm would reach out sometimes, or his left arm would reach out sometimes. And he would be kind of like moving his lips, and his eyes were closed. And I saw all those nursing students, and I was like, has he been like this the whole time? And they said, he's been like this since the CAT scan. And I was like, oh my gosh. I go, this is not normal. I go, this guy doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. He doesn't do drugs. He's an avid cyclist. He's a very healthy person. This is not like a normal even stroke thing, because I'm seeing him move both sides of his body. And I'm like, this is not normal. What is going on here? And I go, I would like to talk to the doctor. And then I walked in. So when I got close to him, and I could see in my work, I've seen so many people that have passed. He looked like someone that had passed. All of his blood flow was no longer in the top layers of his skin. He was white, pale. He has marks on his face from during COVID having to wear double masks, like an N95 and then the surgical mask over it for hours and hours all day long, multiple days, every day. And all of that was gone. His lips were the same color. Everything was pale. And his arms were pale. Everything was pale. And I touched him. He was as cold as ice. And when I touched him, he was still doing this, reaching out and pumping his legs. When I touched him, he opened his eyes, and he had pinpoint, teeny tiny pupils, which is not a good sign for like brain function and stroke symptoms and different things. It can mean lots of things. But when I saw that, I was like, oh no. And he had elevated heart rate and his blood pressure was all over the place. And it's like, something is going on here. That I was like, he's dying. I go, this is not good. And when he opened his eyes, he looked at me, and I could tell everything took very conscious effort. Everything was delayed. Everything was slow. And he looked at me, and it took him many, many seconds. I would say like 15, 20 seconds to eventually get his arms around me in stuttered movements. And he pulls me in, and he cries. And he cries so loudly, like the cry of like a toddler, when they can't control their emotions and they just wail so loud that it's ear splitting. Hearing that kind of volume come out of my husband was shocking. And it actually shocked him. I could tell he felt surprised by that.
I heard it like echo in the room. It was like, oh, did I do that?
Like he didn't have that control over his body to even regulate his voice control. And so then he realizes it's loud, because I could tell it shocked him. So he said quieter. He's like, Kari, I feel like they're trying to take me. I feel like I'm dying. I don't want to go. I don't know who's going to take care of you and the babies. And then you want to take over what was happening while I was driving in the room.
So when you touched me and I opened my eyes, I was looking down, and I remember opening my eyes and seeing what my feet were doing, and I was like, what the heck is going on? This is not me. I had no idea that's what I was doing in my sleep, but I was in a different either mental realm, physical realm, whatever it was, but I was not connected. Like what my body was doing was definitely not connected with my awareness. And it shocked me when I looked down. I'm like, what the? That's like what people, like crazy people do. They're like in the psych ward doing that kind of thing. And I was grabbing the rails, and I literally felt like the stretcher was on the edge of a cliff, and that I was being pulled toward an imaginary vortex in front of me.
Like he could visually see the vortex when he was looking at where like the boundary room would change into the hallway to the nurse's station, that curtain area where they can pull the curtain across.
It wasn't a visual apparition in my physical eyes, but in my brain there was a tunnel or a vortex or a black hole, just a gravity well, I guess probably is the best way to describe it, is like pulling me in that direction. And it was all I could do physically to like no, I don't want to go there. This is not my time to be dying or going anywhere like that. And I was having little visions of, like, it was almost like there was a movie in front of me. So I'd close my eyes and I would see stuff, and then I'd open my eyes and there'd be a curtain there, just like the ER. And at one point I was talking to Kari, and I'm sure it was in like this really drawn out, slow paced speech, but it was like, what's happening? Why is this happening? And as I'm just trying to process, like, what is going on? And I felt like there were like people around me. I didn't see shapes, but I felt like maybe behind a curtain there were people talking about me, for good or for bad. And I couldn't tell what they were saying, but it was something to the effect of like, he's going to go, or we need to take him, or he needs to come.
That was the feeling you got.
Yeah, that was the feeling. Like, basically like a pending transition, right? And one of the moments that most of the memories of the world that I was in have been forgotten. But one very, very stark memory was looking ahead, or with my eyes closed probably, I saw, do you remember in The Matrix? And you've heard this, I'll tell this for your podcast, but it's also in my other previous recordings, but it's, I saw like a swirling vortex. It looked a little bit like floorboards because they were so tightly woven together, but there were like fingers on the end of the floorboards, and it was whirling around. And then I was put into the center of it, but I was also watching it. So I was watching this happen to me, and I felt like it was enveloping me. So it started at my feet and just went all the way up and covered my whole body until it enveloped over my head. And at the Matrix, there's a scene where Morpheus asks Neo, "What is reality?" And Neo says, "I don't know." And he touches the mirror, taps the mirror, and it goes, and then it starts to go up his finger, and then all up and down his arm, and then down his throat. That's what the best thing I can use to describe like what that was happening. But I don't know if there was a time, there might have been a correlation where as I was being sucked into it and it was completely enveloping me, that I was also screaming or grabbing Kari, like, don't let this happen to me.
Right.
So,
wow.
And the world this was happening, because there were multiple scenes. Like I would lose consciousness and I would go into this new scene, and and I might wake up for a few seconds and then go back. And each episode, it was a new like scene of torment. Think about like Lord of the Rings, Mordor, or like just this burnt, crumbled landscape with dark clouds and maybe like orange hues in the background. But just
Rocks.
for whatever, for all intents and purposes, it was basically like hell. And I don't remember specifically people, but I remember like other beings or other presences being there. And the scenes of torture, I don't have specific details, but it was the most horrendous place to be that I could imagine.
Wow.
So I don't know where to transition from that.
So when he told me that he felt like he was dying, I like immediately said a prayer, remember, over you at that point, and asked that you would be healed and that you would have protection from anything that was trying to take you. And I don't really remember anything else that I really said. I probably said other things.
I just remember, I don't remember the exact words, but it felt like the intensity of your words continued to escalate.
Yes.
Like, as you asserted your, the best word I can use is authority as my wife and as a believer in Jesus Christ, that you were calling upon the powers of heaven.
I did.
To arrest this process that was happening. And as you were saying that, the idea came into my head, and I kind of let you finish what you're saying. And I remember you were kind of leaning over like this, and I put my arm out way over in front of you.
Yes, you did.
And at that point, I rebuked Satan. I said, "Leave in the name of Jesus Christ. I command you." And the purpose of doing that was like, I wasn't sure that they were spirits that were doing that, but I was like, I don't want to, this is what I know what to do. This is how the solution that comes to mind right now. And I don't remember what happened after that, but I don't know if you observed any change after that. What was your...
Well, I would say like you were still going in and out of consciousness a lot. Yeah. And every time you'd open your eyes, you would say, is this how it's going to be forever? Am I going to be stuck in this place forever? So you were still going there in and out. Yeah. But I noticed that you were so cold, and I was like, why don't you have a blanket? I grabbed this like travel blanket out of my car for myself because I'm always cold in hospitals. And it's like one you can put down on like a picnic blanket style. So it's like very thick and has like a waterproof membrane kind of thing. So I put that over him. It's quite heavy. And he was still doing the foot shuffling, the reaching out, but it got less and less and less as that was on top of you. Like it helped you in a way stay in your body.
Feel more grounded or
maybe
something.
Feel more grounded or something. But he still had the pinpoint pupils. He was still cold. His eyes, vital signs were everywhere. And the doctor eventually came in, and I said, "Does everything come back?" Like he goes, "Yep, all the blood works come back, all the labs, all the tests are good. They're negative for anything in his blood work, and then the CAT scan shows he's not bleeding in his brain. There's no free flowing blood anywhere." And I was like, "Great, he doesn't have that." I go, "But obviously something is still going wrong with him." this is not a normal stroke. He's able to move each side. And it was interesting when they would come in every 15 minutes or less. I can't even remember. I think it was every 15 minutes to do his neuro checks. He would rouse out of this stupor and become oriented just when they were doing neuro checks. It was very odd. And he would be able to move how they wanted, but the right side was a little bit slower and it was a little bit weaker than the left, but everything he could still do. And he could do the thing where they would like touch your nose, then touch the finger, but it was like, you could tell everything he did, he had to think before. Everything was slower, everything he had to think. And when he would have to verbalize, like, what year is it, the president, all that stuff, he had to think, and then he could say things. Nothing just was spontaneous with his movements or speech or anything. But then he would again go right out of consciousness when they were done, and he'd come in and out. But he came to again when the doctor was there. And when I said that, and I go, can he have the clot busting medication? Because there's only that 4-hour window that they can give it after a stroke. And I said, since he's not bleeding, and is this a stroke? He goes, well, has the neurologist come in and talked to you guys? I go, no. So he said, I'll go call the neurologist. And he talked to the neurologist, and it probably took like 15, 20 minutes. And he's still doing the same, in and out of consciousness, and comes back. And again, Aaron came back to himself when the doctor came in. Mm-hmm. So interesting that kept happening. He said, the neurologist said that you can have this clot busting medication if you want it. Is that something you want to do? Aaron, had to be alert and oriented enough to get the sign. He wasn't going to do it if I just said. He really wanted Aaron to be okay with this. And Aaron, you want to tell that part?
I gave a huge thumbs up. I felt like in my soul that was what I needed. I was like, yes, that will solve the problem. Because as I was going through their different assessments, I was starting to think like, okay, well, this might not be the typical stroke, but I feel like there's something wrong in my brain. And I know they were trying to spot symptoms of like a really strong sided stroke. And I'm like, well, what if it's in the middle? Mm-hmm. It could be in the middle. And if it was, then the clot busting medication was really the only thing that was going to help it. And I desperately wanted to be out of that in and out of consciousness realm. I literally said, I'm like, God, if you want me to die, take me. If you want me to live, put me back, but don't put me in this middle realm. This might be a decent time to mention I remember from Lord of the Rings, the scene with Gandalf in the mines of Moria, and the Balrog, which is like that fiery beast from the depths of hell, basically, and he grabs Gandalf, and he falls and he falls and he falls and he falls and he falls, and Gandalf is with him. Everybody thinks that Gandalf died, and after this long fight, Gandalf defeats the Balrog, and then becomes like a more exalted person, or like a person who had been basically through a trial of fire. But I felt like I had been pulled down into this abyss, and I was still down there at that time. And I definitely, I was doing everything, looking for any way, like even like Gandalf was doing, is just like reaching for anything to not be pulled down.
Well, the doctor told me that he had all the symptoms of something called a pontine stroke. And your pons is like right above your brain stem, like the lowest part of your brain. And it like controls a lot of your autonomic nervous system, like your respiration, your breathing, heart rate, balance, coordination. And they said that they couldn't see a clot. They couldn't see, but they weren't doing an MRI. They were doing a CAT scan. And they said an MRI with contrast would really show us if he had a clot. But because he had the CAT scan with contrast, they didn't want to immediately do an MRI because they didn't think his kidneys could handle more contrast. They wanted to give his kidneys a break. But what they didn't explain to us, because we agreed to do the clot busting medication, was that now he couldn't even have the MRI until the clot busting medication was completely out of the system for another 24 hours. They didn't explain that part. So we agreed to get the clot busting medication, they gave it to us, and I don't know. Sometime afterward, I asked them, I go, okay, so when will we then do the MRI, in the morning? They're like, oh, no. We're going to have to wait until 5 p.m. the next day to even schedule it, because that has to get completely out of your system. I said, well, then we're not even going to know if he had a clot, because the clot busting medication would have done its job. And they're like, yeah, pretty much. And it's like, okay, why don't you go? You can take over.
Wow.
So from my perspective, once that I remember them giving the medication, and time was compressed or expanded, or like I didn't have a really good feel for the sequence of events, but in my mind, I felt like the periods of time of being unconscious in this dark realm, they became shorter, and my ability to maintain coherent thought became longer and longer, until finally I just didn't go back to that dark realm. So eventually I was just able to like just speak clearly. And once I got to that, back to quote normal, I felt 95% back. I did not have, I was able to think clearly, just completely normally at that. And that happened that evening.
So from my perspective, the student nurses came in with a nurse, and it took them like 20 minutes to feel comfortable to give this medication. Like they had to like have all their ducks in a row, because when they give this medication, they have to then check you every 15 minutes for a certain number of hours, then every half hour for a certain number of hours, and every hour for a certain number of hours, and every shift, because this medication causes you to not clot, and it can actually cause you to have a bleeding stroke, and it can cause a stroke. It's so dangerous to give. So then when they gave the medication, he was still cold to the touch, pinpoint pupils, all of those things. And I got a phone call. I hadn't gotten a phone call. All my social media posts and everything had blown up because I immediately posted on Facebook. I forgot to mention this. Before even leaving the play place that we were at with the kids, I immediately posted on Facebook. I go, my husband's in the ER. He's either having a stroke or a PE, like a pulmonary embolism in his lungs, or he's having a heart attack. I don't know what, because he just said he's having symptoms. But because he couldn't speak, I just said, you're having a stroke.
Right.
And I go, can you guys please pray for him? So, of course, I'm getting gazillions of text messages, gazillion messenger things, gazillion things like dinging on my phone, which I silenced. But I got a phone call at that point, right after they gave the medication to him. And the phone call was our friend, who happens to be someone that we met playing Dungeons and Dragons. He was our the very first time we ever played, he invited us to play with him. He was our dungeon master, and he called us and he said, I am 2 exits away on the freeway with our friend Brittany, who is their friend and is one of the persons that played with us. What do you need? I go, you're 2 exits away? Yeah, we can be there right there. I go, Jerome, that was his name. Aaron really needs a blessing. Can you come and do that? And he had recently joined our church and our faith. And we believe that you can give a priesthood blessing of healing and ask for, again, more powers of heaven for healing for someone. And he was like, Kari, I have only done that once. I don't know how to do that. I'm not going to, they had to talk me through how to do it. I don't remember how to do that. And Aaron, again, he came to, because I had it on speakerphone, he came to himself in that moment, like, I can help tell you what to say. Like, again, has to think and to say it.
Because they use oil as part of the
anointing.
As anointing. And I remember that I had an oil packet in my wallet.
He was able to remember
in case of
that.
an emergency.
Wow.
There's one in my wallet. I'll talk you through it. I think I can remember what to do. Just say what I say.
Yeah.
And that's what he's thinking in his head, but that's not really what's coming out of his mouth. But exactly, yeah. So they come again. They're there. It's like 10 minutes later because they really were that close. They come in and are able to give him a blessing about half an hour after he'd gotten his dose. And they stayed for 4 hours. And over that course of that 4 hours, like within an hour, I saw like his fingers started to pink up, his lips started to pink up. His pupils were still pinpoint, but everything started to normalize again. And over the rest of the evening, they left, later in the day, that he was cracking dad jokes. And again, those, like he said, those periods of being in another realm, of feeling like they're taking him, of feeling that torture, got less and less and less. And you can take over, babe.
So they admitted me to the ICU for monitoring and things like that. I stayed there for another day and a half. There were no further episodes of going into this dark realm. So what at this point, I want to kind of transition into, okay, how am I processing, or how did I, or how am I processing what happened? And I'll start off by explaining, like, in our church, we talk about, where we were before we came to earth, before we were born, and where we would expect to go after. And that's why, we talk about near-death experiences, is that there's glimpses of what might be for certain people. And it's, I've been fascinated by it since I was a teenager. I don't know when you read your first near-death experience.
I was a teenager, yeah.
And so I'm trying to piece together what I had read about near-death experiences and what we call the plan of salvation, which is like pre-earth life, earth life, and then there's what we call a veil of forgetfulness that you pass through right before you die, and then you go to what's spirit realm.
Well, the veil of forgetfulness is when you come to earth, and then you pass through that veil.
Okay,
and leave.
Yeah, you go through the veil again.
Yeah,
and that veil is basically what separates you from the spirit realm.
Right.
And my best explanation is that I was in between the worlds. Like, it was as if that veil separating me from this life and the life of the dead, is really the way I would explain it, was very, it was almost like they were overlapping. Not almost, they were overlapping. I don't know if I left my body, and if I did, I don't know how many times I left, or if I was half in, half out. But I definitely felt like there was a certain, just a nebulous existence going on.
Right.
And it was surprising to me as I was processing it. I go, those people, those entities, they are right here. They are around us at all times. And sometimes your eyes are open to them, but most of the time you are completely oblivious. But what that experience did for me is, like, now I know that they, for good or for bad, are all around. And I'm trying to distill this down to, because I've been researching this and thinking about it for the last 6 weeks, but so I think I was in what some people call the valley of the shadow of death, which is what I talked about on the previous podcast, but really just this margin. And I did not have a life review. I did not see a light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't see any personages specifically. I was held short of that. And when my friend gave me this blessing, he said, "Your work is not done. You will make a full recovery." And for whatever reason that this experience happened, I was given another chance. I was given another time to be with Kari, to raise our kids, and to help and serve other people in whatever way I feel inspired. And even though I didn't go through a life review at that time, I am currently going through a life review of my own to the best of my abilities on a daily basis. I think, okay, this is what I know that I've done. This is where I know I need to be based on what I've been taught all my life because of the teachings in my church. And a much more intense self-review process multiple times per day, perhaps. Like, oh, I could have done this better. Our church recently had a conference where one of the speakers had recently had a severe health crisis, where he was in the hospital for about 6 weeks. I'm talking about Jeffrey R. Holland, for any of your listeners who might be members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. His wife passed away, And then shortly after that, within hours, he found himself in the hospital. And as he described it, he said, I found myself at the edge of eternity. And then his message that he gave to us, he says, a lot of those details I'm going to keep to myself. But what I did feel was a renewed dedication, and not just being a member of my church, checking boxes and going through just nominally saying, okay, I've done this, done this, done this, and this, and this. But renewed dedication, wearing out his life in service, seeking his purpose actively, instead of just kind of resting on your laurels like, okay, I'm in the roll books, I'm good, Jesus is going to save me. But more along the lines of,
have you been changed by that?
Have you been changed by it? Yeah. And in our church, they say, okay, the pathway that you follow, they call us the covenant path, right? When you enter the church, you're baptized. And then as a young man, you receive priesthood at various levels. And then you might go through what we call the temple, which is like, how do you describe it to the layperson who's never... It's
there's a place where you make covenants with Heavenly Father.
Yeah.
That you make promises that you will do things so that you can receive further light and knowledge. It's just
increased blessings and further light and knowledge, right? And
it's nothing secret. It's just sacred.
Yeah. And so once you you can go through that at about the age 18 or so. And once you've done that, then, if you decide to get married, there's another ceremony we call sealing, where, the marriage is valid in the next life, right? And we place a lot of value on that, because we believe that children and spouses can be with you even into the next world if you're good. You can't. It doesn't just happen if you're, you do it then you forget. Still gotta earn and obey and work toward that process of perfection. But that's something we believe.
This is actually why his experience, I think, was so important, is because we don't believe that just because you are good that your family will be with you. Your family has to want to be with you. That covenant or that bond is a choice. It's not like it's forced upon the people there. So if your kids don't like how you are treating them and they don't want to be with you, like what if you were abusive or whatever, those kids are not forced to then be with that person for eternity. So that's kind of what you took from that experience, right?
Yeah. And somebody else was talking about, okay, so once you do all those things, you get baptized, you might be ordained in the priesthood, you might get married, you go through the endowment session in the temple, etc. And then from there, what they call it enduring to the end. And a lot of the church culture up until I had this experience was like, you just basically, you be good till you die.
Right.
Thought of it was like, you endure, so you stay good. You might have temptations, but you adhere to the teachings and you stay faithful to Jesus Christ and your testimony until the day that you're called home to Heavenly Father, and that's all you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
That has not. That has been completely expanded to me in this experience, because what it tells me is there are influences out there that they have a compulsion to change, to divert you from where you should be.
Right.
No matter where, it doesn't matter what belief system you have.
Mm-hmm.
Latter-day Saint, Baptist, atheist, agnostic, whatever religion you feel like you belong to, they do not like anything good at all. And I feel like in these times, there's actually a more intense sort of mustering of the good and the evil. And that this experience happened to me in order, as a wake-up call, to say, you know what? You can't do what you used to do anymore. You got to work harder. There's things coming in the future, and what rock are you hiding under that you haven't seen? Events in the news. things are changing. You got eclipses, you have events and conflicts throughout the world. But there is definitely more of a polarization of good and evil. And these powers from beyond the realm are calling their forces to do some of the work that needs to happen before a lot of these bigger events are coming. The end times, we could call it. And so that's something that I learned from that. And then it's also just built this, like, increased my hunger for further knowledge and understanding of those things, and realizing that I was not safe in the place that I was. I thought, oh, I'm going through all these check boxes, I'm good. But no, you got to continue on and moving up the line, and this process of what we call perfection, where you are
just being saved by grace, like
changing yourself, trying to be more like Christ, becoming more like him. There's a scripture that says basically, if you don't know him, he will not know you when he comes. You'll see him, but you won't recognize him as for who he is, because you have not tried to become like him. So I have like a much more intense desire to know who he was and to be like him as much as I can. So when that day comes, that I would recognize him.
Well, and I'd also say the other thing that you're really focused on is also improving your relationships with the kids and with me, and trying to really work on anything that we can do that builds more love and more peace in our home.
Because the first thing I was worried about was losing my car and my house and my job. Just kidding. I wasn't worried about any of that stuff. I didn't care about any of that stuff at all. The only thing I was thinking about was my wife and my kids.
Right.
None of that stuff mattered one bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got some questions for you. So, okay, when you first made it to the hospital, I know this is like not really like that big of a relevance, I guess, but you were saying you had reached the receptionist and then you were like fumbling with your ID or your badge card or whatever. Did you know that person? Because you said you worked at that hospital, right?
That particular person I did not know. I had not met them. No.
Okay.
He told me he'd only worked at this hospital a few times, and he didn't even know where the ER was. And he actually did skip this part. When he was walking to the ER, there was a nurse that had an empty wheelchair that had just dropped a patient off at the front. But he was so slow with his words, he was able to get out, where's the ER? He's wearing a name badge. He's in scrubs. He must be an hospital employee. She just says it's this way. And he was struggling to get out. Can I have that wheelchair? Can you help me? Can I sit down? Couldn't get those words out in time. She was gone. So but he was also, didn't say this, he was leaning, he said, a little bit to the right as he was going, and everything was getting progressively worse when he got to the ER. So he kind of he glossed over some of that part.
Yeah.
That's okay. I mean, I totally get it. You've got a lot going on all at once. You're potentially leaving your body, coming back, trying to fight for your life. It's hard to remember all the details, so no worries there. Kari, I actually had a question for you. So when you received that text message from your husband that said, like, I love you in all caps, like, what was going through your head? Did you think that was going to be it, or?
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, he's dying. He's sending me this because he's afraid he's dying. And I immediately felt like, oh, I love him so much, and that he thought to send that to me just to make sure I knew he loved me, that I could have that forever. Like, it made me cry. I just,
I'm not trying to bring you back there. It's just like, I almost cried too.
I was so glad I was close when he sent that text, that it was only 10 more minutes when he sent that.
Yeah. I was even like, tell my wife what bay I'm in so that she can walk straight in the door and not be like, I'm looking for Aaron Moulton. But just like straight in. Didn't want to spare a single second.
Right. And Aaron, you had said earlier that you had, rebuked, whether it be Satan or the demons or whatever negative spirits or feeling that was coming after you. When you did rebuke it, did you feel that made an impact at all?
I don't know if I was conscious enough to know I think it brought me peace to know that I had done that. As like, like at least I thought of it, right? If that's what's happening to me, because there's a combination of so many things happening all at once that my brain in its stroke state couldn't even process what was going on, right? Even now, I struggle 6 weeks later to understand what was going on. But at least I can look back and say, you know what? At least I did that. And having studied that a little bit more, it's not even as simple as doing that one rebuke. Sometimes sometimes it depends on the faith in Christ of the person who does the rebuke. There are varying strengths of spirits out there, and sometimes it'd be like, huh, you haven't fasted and prayed enough. I'm going to stay right here until someone else who's more righteous comes along, because I want to be, doing this thing. So I didn't immediately feel, and that's not the first time I had done that. In the past, there was an immediate change of feeling. So what I think is that in that moment of weakness of my mind being afraid, I was afraid of what was happening to me, the medical problems that were happening, that was recognized by those spirits who are all around us,
of the negative spirits,
spirits that are all around us, taking advantage of that my defenses were down, and attempting to demotivate me, to scare me, whatever it was that their mission was. They actually fulfill missions and directives. Whatever it was that they were sent to do, they were determined to do that, because they recognized a moment of weakness. And those moments of weakness happen when we're under the influence of substances, or when we're angry, or we do certain actions that break our connection with the good spirits. Those bad spirits come in and take those places.
I think it's kind of like anytime we do things that are contrary to our personal belief system, it weakens our kind of like strength, or our light, and allows a conduit or an opening for things like that to happen. And that's actually something I think you really did take away from that. Is Aaron said to me, he's like, my anger, my frustration at times, or my reactivity to life, or to situations with the kids, or to family life and things, maybe I'm the one that's bringing negative spirits or negative things into our family dynamic. And maybe this situation that I went through is helping me realize I need to make sure that I'm not bringing them with me into the family life. Yeah.
And Aaron, you had also said that there was a point where you were kind of going in and out of consciousness, and when you would close your eyes, you would see things. Do you remember any of the things that you had seen with your eyes closed?
The best way I could describe it is, just imagine a landscape of like broken lava rock, just jagged. There's no smooth ground at all anywhere. Like, to walk in a straight line, you couldn't walk in a straight line. You'd have to like crawl over these boulders that had jagged edges. It was like the edge of a volcano, right? And the overcast, like dark overhanging clouds, mists, black mist floating around, and shades of like orange up in the sky, maybe on the horizon, or lightning, or storm clouds on the horizon, but very little light, mostly just in shades of gray. And either trying to make my way through this world. I don't remember like walking for hours, but just like existing there. And I vaguely remember like literally like scenes of torture. I don't remember specific like machinery or anything, but like I just remember pain and agony, but not of like, the pain that you feel on earth from like an injury or breaking your arm or being stabbed or something. It was like an eternal, like my soul was being tortured. From, I don't know if it was an emotion that I was feeling, like regret, but it was just like, I almost feel like it was a mockery. It was like, we have you now, we get to have our way with you, and we can scare you and make you feel like we do. because we're stuck in this place, and we're just going to make you feel as scared and not have any, hope of rescue. We're just going to imprison you here forever, is kind of the feeling that I was getting.
Oh man, that's very intense, Aaron. I don't think I have heard you describe it so well before.
I'm just gonna give you like a perspective, but like you tell me what your thoughts are on this. I've heard other people who have had near-death experiences and people who have been exposed to what they believe is on the other side, and of course, it's all perception. Some people believe that when you die or when you're on the other side, the things that you're thinking, you know how you've heard the term manifestation. What you're thinking happens immediately, whereas like in life on this earth, when you think something, it takes more time for that to come to you. So I this is more just like a rhetorical question. I'm not speaking on your character as a person, but I'm wondering if maybe in that moment when you were, thinking you were going to die, like maybe at that time, maybe you didn't think you were worth going to heaven. And so you were like bringing that to you, because it sounds like you're very deep rooted in your faith. So it's interesting to me that you would have seen something so negative when like it sounds like you should have experienced something blissful. But on the other side, I've also heard, like I did have another girl on here who is also in the LDS faith. She did leave her body twice and she saw like or felt like bliss, but she is also, I think she's married, and she was like, when I felt that, I didn't even think about my husband. I was kind of like ready to go. I was like, I'm out. Like, and you were really fighting to stay. Maybe if you had seen or felt, God or source or that like pure peace, love, and understanding, then you wouldn't have wanted to fight. So who knows, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and I mentioned this before in a previous interview, is that I think I was shielded from seeing those blissful scenes, or the being there, with God, and seeing relatives who'd passed on. Then I would have been more motivated to stay. Yeah, for sure. And I think that's so the purpose of this was not necessarily to let me see those places, and the fact that I was fighting going there was like, no, it's not my time. It's not my time. It's not my time. Like the whole thing, I was just making this conscious choice. Like, no, you cannot take me. And I was almost like negotiating with God. Like, I don't know what your plan is, but I don't want to go.
Right.
I'm going to, I have agency, and, you got to give me a good reason. I'm not just going to go quietly to this place.
He told me that this book came to mind. Tell him about how that book came to mind when everything was happening.
What's it called? It's the Survivors Club. Yeah. So it talks about people who like commit suicide, or they're close to death. They're just either
I thought something more like a tragic accidents sometimes happen.
Yeah, or they're faced with a choice, right? And they're like, no, I'm not going back. No, don't send me back. Or don't take me now. Or they'll. There's even stories of people who like they're sick in the hospital, and they'll wait until all their relatives are around them before they like give up and allow their body to rest. And I thought of that too. I'm like, no, not going. It's not my time. Not ready. So I felt like I had, so much work to do still.
Right.
He told me that thought and that book came to him when he was going in the CAT scan, and he was having that collider effect and feeling like his body was starting to separate from his spirit, and that he was like, they're not monitoring me. They don't even know what my oxygenation is right now. There's nothing on me. I'm just in here while they're doing this test. They can't even tell what my vital signs are. And so he's like, what can I do to help? So that's when you're like, I'm going to breathe deeply.
Yeah, I was like, deep breaths. Come on, deep breaths. And my friend, so later, after this was over, I knew a friend of mine had been really, really sick with COVID. And I go, hey, did you feel the pull? And he immediately knew what I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, yeah. And as soon as I felt that, I proned myself, because he does the same thing I do. And he turned himself on his stomach, because it helps your lungs work better and get better oxygen. And so that's what he did on his own, because he felt that gravity. Like
Mm-hmm.
he was, if he didn't change something, he was going to die. And he's like, no.
Yeah, not ready to go.
Yeah.
Also, have you talked to your church at all about this experience, and have
I'm
they been accepting of it
not a
or not
lot.
yet?
I'm
Okay.
scared because I don't want to be judged. I don't want them to
That's
think like, what's he not telling us?
right.
I think when I've had a chance to process, um, and if there's someone who may have also had a similar experience, that I might, and there's actually a lot more people out there who've had these kinds of experiences, and I'm starting to recognize, keywords or things that people say in passing that might indicate that. But I really want to get a chance to process it myself, um, as to why. And I think I alluded to this earlier. I really felt like I was in a margin, and um, there is the rest of the script. I'll try to paraphrase it because I don't have it in front of me. It was like, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for the
Mhm,
Lord is my shepherd.
mhm.
And there's a possibility that, each person's death is different. And if you're really, really sick and you're just killed instantly, then you go straight through all of this stuff, right? And you go straight
Right,
to the light, and then there's the light, and there's Jesus right there, right?
right.
In my case, I was like kicking and screaming, no way are you taking me? And so I think I got stuck in the middle
Yeah.
realm.
Mhm,
And it was like, we're going to take you. And I'm like, no, you're not. I'm going to take you. And just this
mhm.
fight was going on for whatever period of time, plus whatever symptoms were causing things in my head to go on. Um, but uh, it really brought the question in my head, like, I've never read a story like this of someone's near death experience where they saw so much darkness and despair. And it really, like, ask her, she's probably like, Aaron, it's been 6 weeks. You can stop thinking about this.
No, no, I don't think that. I can think, can you please stop sending me another NDE to watch or listen
Yeah.
to?
And I've read a whole bunch of NDEs, watched a bunch of videos ever since then as well, to try to get an understanding. And there's examples in the scriptures of that kind of thing happening, where um, the the dark powers have come upon people, and
Mhm,
it's but I don't want that to be like, I mean, it's hard for my experience not to be sort of that not to be the sort of trademark of my experience that I had. But what I try to focus on is that Jesus is the master of those things. He conquered death. Though we must go through death in this life and
Yep.
experiences that are similar to hell. I think there's levels of hell that we can't even fathom, but
mhm.
there are times that the very jaws of hell may seem as appear to be opening and swallowing us up. Um, and that is part of the mortal experience. And at times, I do believe that as part of our growth process, we're allowed to experience the buffetings of Satan,
Mhm.
and as a test to see who will be turned to when those times come. Right? Do we seek God in those times, or do we say, "Oh, this is where I belong"? But no, to believe who you are and that you have the power with Jesus Christ to be delivered from, literally delivered from death and hell.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm,
I wanted to say something about that. So I know this experience is mostly about Aaron, but I wanted to share my side of the experience, that how I actually felt um, like taken care of during all of this, knowing that he was going through such a hard thing. I think because I immediately asked for people to pray, I could feel all of their love and care and their prayers. I do believe that there's a power in people thinking about you and praying for you and wanting your best and wanting best for you, that energy, that light, that healing can come. And just that, all the quote coincidences that I call miracles that happened during this, that
Amy.
that I called. I was talking to my mom when he called. He called me 3 times. He didn't say this either. And I thought he was just driving to pick us up. And my mom was telling a story. So I didn't answer. She was almost done with the story. And then he called again and she was done. And I said, hey, mom, it's Aaron. I do need to go. And we hung up, but he hung up before I could get him. And then right when that happened, the kids ran by. And my kids are 4. They don't want to leave anywhere fun like an indoor play place. But that kids, Dad has called twice. He's ready for us to go. We need to go up front, get your shoes on. They didn't say one word. They marched like little angels right up front to go and get their shoes on. Normally it's, 10 minutes of chasing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're there getting our shoes on when he calls again. And normally it's, Mom, put my socks on for me. Mom, do this for me. They were doing it themselves. They're just putting their socks and their shoes on without any guff. And any mom will know, wow, that's a miracle right there. And then Aaron calls and again, I was able to immediately know that something was wrong. And I was able to advocate for him to the people at the ER. He said there were 2 people ahead of him. He said they were going to take care of him, right? So he sat down and was going to wait. If he had kept waiting, he would have gotten worse and worse and worse. And also, who goes to an ER and sits next to somebody? He sat next to somebody. I'm like, get away from me. I'm going to sit by myself in this corner, He sat right. I'm sure the person he sat next to was like, "Why are you sitting by me?" He said it wasn't a crowded ER, but he goes and sits next to this guy, and
the one person sitting there,
right. And he hands the phone to him, and he's able to understand is here and point to the desk, and is able to take the phone up there, and that they were able to see him so quickly and immediately, and take care of those medical things that he needed. And that I was able to immediately have someone to watch my kids and just drop them off within 10 minutes and be on my way for an hour-long drive.
Yeah.
But even during that hour-long drive, what came to me? I am so thankful he had the stroke at the hospital after his shift. He didn't have it in the OR, doing anesthesia for a patient, and put somebody else's life at risk. He was done with his shift. He was still at the hospital. This hospital is right next to the freeway. If he had started to drive, he would have been in that rainstorm. I passed hundreds of cars pulled over with their lights on. If he had pulled over with his lights on and figured out, he didn't explain this. It took him a while to figure out how to unlock his phone and call me. And because I was the last person he called, he was able to call me. Wow. If he would have taken him a while to figure out how to call 911. And if he'd called 911, we passed 3 accidents. I passed 3 accidents with 3 ambulances in 15 minutes. Would there have been an ambulance available? A police car? Would they have been able to find him from his, I have symptoms? What car are you in? Truck. Black truck. You know what I mean? Would they have been able to find him within 4 hours? If he was driving and had been in an accident and had hurt himself, would they have thought his symptoms were from the accident? Would they have even realized he was having a stroke? If he had hurt himself, he would have been unqualified for getting a clot-busting medication because he would have been bleeding internally from the accident, or anywhere in his body would never have clotted. He would not have been qualified to get the clot-busting medication. So all of these things occurred. The fact that he decided, you know what, I better walk back into the hospital instead of in his confused state driving or trying to call 911 and have them come and try and find him in an employee parking, leveled parking structure, trying to, drive through and find him in there. He decided to walk back in, and that, I get there and I get the text from him and I feel, I'm loving, I'm praying on him and things. We go in there, I pray for him. And then I get the phone call from Jerome and he's able to get that blessing. And I was able to advocate for him to get that clot busting medication. He was able to get it. I feel like all of those things, I felt like I was really taken care of. And then something I didn't share with him until a few days later, because I didn't feel like he needed to deal with this. But the next morning, I had processed a lot and I was panicked. I was still worried that he was I knew he was okay, but I was still all of the stress was finally expressing itself and coming out of my body because I said, compartmentalized it and went into let's take care of everybody else nurse mode. And so it was coming out of my body, and my friend was going to watch my kids. So I come out of my the exit of my subdivision where I live, and there was construction, and all these cars were lined up all the way, miles. And I was like, oh no, I'm not going to be able to drop my kids off. So I pulled into my subdivision really quick to go at a different exit. And when I did, there was a very narrow gap in cars for me to go. And I gunned it, but I didn't realize, because not an exit I normally take, I went over the curb and popped the right tires on front and back
front and rear tires
of my car. And I immediately heard the hiss and I heard the blah, 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 blah sound of me driving. I was like, oh no.
I'm so glad it was not in the car.
I'm so glad he wasn't. I didn't tell him. I'm supposed to go to the ICU to see my husband, drop my kids off and go see him. And I immediately pull over, and the car that pulls behind me is a man, and I'm crying. And I get out. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. He's like, no, I got this. I'm going to take care of you. I'll change your tires. Immediately, this person pulls behind me and says this to me. And he goes, I was praying that I would actually be able to help somebody today. I'm like, what the heck?
Wow.
Right? And he pulls over, and then he sees.
I think it was an angel.
No, it was a person.
Yeah,
I have his number. I texted him money for these tires. He's a real person. Well, sure. He answered my prayer, whatever. So he changes my tires, and my friend shows up at the accident place and takes my kids from this place. And another friend shows up and is like, I'm going to drive you to the hospital. And my husband's at the dentist appointment. He'll pick your car up after this guy changes your tires for you. And we'll go. And this man changed the one with the full-size spare I had, took my front one off and took it to a car place, got a new tire put on it, brought it back, put it on my car, all for me. All these people did this all for me while I was going through, this crazy experience where I was finally kind of like letting my worries out and my fear. And I really just felt like I was being taken care of while he was also being taken care of. So I just wanted to share that as well.
That's beautiful.
And her friend lives in Missouri, was just like randomly painting one of the rooms in her house and gets this prompting, you need to pray. She's like, about what do I need to pray? You need to pray. She's like, okay, I guess I'll pray. So she starts praying. And as she starts praying, she realizes that she needs to pray for us. She had no prior knowledge, and it was pray for Aaron and Kari. Mm-hmm. She didn't know what it was about, but that's what she did. And
it was during that time when
it was right about that time.
At 3:00 when you were having your stroke.
About 3:00 when things were happening.
Yeah.
Wow. That's beautiful. I love that so much. Honestly, I personally, I was raised in a different faith. Like, it's same, I guess. Like, it was like charismatic Christian. I have since walked away from the church just from some trauma that I've experienced. But I think that, like, whatever belief system that you have, like, stick with it. And it seems like you guys have had confirmation after confirmation after confirmation that your faith is like, you've been rewarded in your faith. And I think, looking at this experience the way that you have, that maybe it was like a wake up call for you, that like now you can live every day of your life with purpose. And like deep down that, like, when you go the next time, hopefully, like, the next time, maybe not another near-death experience, that you'll go where you're supposed to be going. And I think that this story will help a lot of people, because a lot of people who experience things like this, they don't have people to talk to about it. And I think people need to have reassurance that there is something beyond this life, whether they think it's positive or negative. But I think that there's a lot of people that you're going to be able to help just sharing this story. Have you heard of the IANS group? Like okay.
It's the near-death experience, like an international group. Yeah, I've heard of them. Mm-hmm. I haven't reached out to them yet.
Okay.
I'm still processing, like, sort of the narrative that's in my mind about what happened. But yeah, I've heard of them. Yeah.
I think that's the next place that you should go.
All right.
It's basically just a group of everybody who's had experiences like that. I personally haven't had my own experience that I remember.
Don't wish for it, okay?
No, I know. I know. I did almost die when I was a baby, but I don't remember anything about it. But there is just this like pull to like learn about all of these things. And I think there's a shift happening in this world right now where people are either going back to the faith that they had as kids, or they're just like wanting to hear more about the other side and spirituality. So that's basically why I've created this. So I really appreciate you sharing your story with me.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
And thanks for having us.
Of course. Is there anything else that you want to touch on that we didn't get a chance to cover?
I want to say two things. One, I really love the picture of the lion behind you. I think that is so cool. And the other thing, like going along with what you said, that whoever's listening, that I hope that the message that I want people to understand or to take away is, take a look at what your belief system is, and if there's anything more that you can do, mostly for the people around you, smile a couple of times more often. I used to just kind of walk down the hallway and not really acknowledge people. And now I have a compulsion at least to acknowledge their existence now, or say hi or something. And that alone is a small thing that we can do just to help people feel connected and that they're loved. And whether your belief system tells you to do that, or whatever else it is, just renew your devotion to that belief system, and it will take you on a journey that you never thought that you could go on. And it's a journey that we learn every day more about, and experience happiness and fulfillment that we never thought that we could.
Yeah.
So that's what I think I'd leave.
Yeah, I feel like one experience that I heard of, and this is just, it always has stuck with me, and I think I'm just going to keep sharing it almost every episode. Somebody said that when they had a near-death experience and they went to the other side, they saw what they believed to be God or source, and they asked, "What should I call you?" And the God or source said, "It matters less what you call me, but that you call me at all." So I think that like everybody from every faith should just like, go dive in deeper, spread the love. Like that's really what it is at the end of the day, is just love one another as you would love yourself. And we show who God really is by loving each other and being kind. So I definitely agree with what you said there.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming and talking with me today. I could probably talk to you all day long, but I know you have your kids and you probably got to go. So we'll just leave the call there, and I'll just end the recording here.